Victoria Carter spit in her pregnant daughter-in-law's face. "Sign it, you disgusting parasite!" Victoria Carter grabbed Sophie Reynolds' wrist and slammed her hand down onto the divorce papers. Sophie Reynolds stood frozen, her husband's mother's saliva dripping down her cheek, divorce papers trembling in her 7-month pregnant hands. The entire Carter family Christmas party exploded in applause. "Sign it! Sign it! Sign it!" 40 voices chanted, while Sophie's husband Daniel filmed her humiliation, his pregnant mistress laughing beside him. Sophie's tears mixed with spit as she pressed pen to paper, her unborn daughter kicking frantically inside her. No one offered her a napkin. No one offered her a chair. No one knew the trembling woman they were destroying would destroy them all before sunrise. Before we continue, I want to invite you to subscribe to our channel and follow Sophie's journey to the very end. Comment below with your city, so I can see how far this story travels. Now let's return to the Christmas party that destroyed the Carter family forever. "I said sign it." Victoria's voice sliced through the Christmas music. Page 1. Now. Sophie's tears fell onto the paper. "Victoria, please. Can we discuss this somewhere private? I'm 7 months pregnant. I need to sit down." "You need to shut up and sign." Victoria grabbed Sophie's arm and squeezed until her nails left marks. "You've been sitting in my family's chairs for 3 years. That ends tonight." Daniel didn't even look at his wife. He was too busy whispering something into Megan's ear that made her giggle. "Daniel." Sophie's voice cracked. "Daniel, look at me. Please." He finally turned, and the coldness in his eyes made Sophie step backward. "What do you want, Sophie? A goodbye kiss? A thank you for wasting 3 years of my life? I want to understand what happened to us. I want to know why you're doing this. I want—" You want. Daniel mimicked her voice cruelly. "That's all you ever do. Want things you don't deserve. Want a life you didn't earn. Want my family's money and status without bringing anything to the table." Marcus Carter raised his glass from across the room. "Sign the papers, Sophie. Some of us want to get back to celebrating." "Yeah." Olivia Carter added her phone recording everything. "Hurry up so we can toast to Daniel's freedom." Sophie looked down at page 1. The words blurred through her tears. Dissolution of marriage. Irreconcilable differences. Petitioner Daniel Robert Carter. Respondent Sophie Marie Reynolds. Her hand trembled as she pressed the pen to paper. "That's a good girl." Victoria's smile dripped with venom. "See how easy this is when you cooperate." Sophie signed her name. The ink smeared from her tears, but no one cared. Page 2. Victoria flipped the document. "Keep going." Sophie turned to the second page, and her blood ran cold. "Full custody to the father." She looked up at Daniel. "You want to take my baby?" "Our baby," Daniel corrected. "And yes, I want full custody. My mother has already prepared the nursery. Megan will help raise the child properly." Sophie's hand flew to her belly. "You can't take my daughter from me. I'm her mother." "A mother who can't provide for her." Victoria stepped closer until Sophie could smell her expensive perfume. "What are you going to give this child, Sophie? A life of poverty, second-hand clothes, public school education? My granddaughter deserves better than you. She deserves her mother. She deserves stability." Daniel's voice was ice. "Something you could never provide." Megan walked over and stood beside Daniel, her 6-month pregnant belly prominently displayed. "Don't worry, Sophie. I'll take good care of your daughter. She'll have a real family." The words hit Sophie like a physical blow. A real family. As if she was nothing. As if her love meant nothing. As if carrying this child for 7 months and feeling every kick and dreaming of every milestone meant absolutely nothing. "Sign page 2, Victoria ordered. "We don't have all night." Sophie's tears fell faster. "Please, I'm begging you, let me at least have shared custody. I'll agree to any schedule you want. Just don't take my baby away completely." Daniel exchanged a look with his mother. Something passed between them. Some agreement Sophie wasn't part of. No. Daniel didn't hesitate. My daughter will be raised as a Carter. She doesn't need your influence confusing her. Harold Carter spoke up from his armchair. Daniel's right. The child needs proper upbringing. Sophie, I'll be honest with you. I never approved of this marriage. I told my son from the beginning that you were beneath us. Now sign the papers and let my family move on. Sophie stared at Harold. 3 years of Sunday dinners. 3 years of holidays. 3 years of trying to earn his respect. And this was what he really thought of her. I loved your son, Sophie whispered. I gave up everything for him. What exactly did you give up? Victoria laughed. Your job at the elementary school, your apartment in that terrible neighborhood? Face it, Sophie. You had nothing before Daniel, and you'll have nothing after him. The only difference is, now you won't have my son to leech off of. The room erupted in laughter. Sophie's phone buzzed in her pocket. Then again. Then again. What's that? Daniel noticed the sound. Another man already. I knew you were... It's nothing. Sophie pulled out her phone to silence it and saw the screen. Dad. 15 missed calls. 8 text messages. Her heart stopped. Victoria grabbed the phone from Sophie's hand. Let's see who the gold digger's been talking to. She looked at the screen and snorted. Dad, how precious. Is Daddy going to come rescue his little princess? She held up the phone so everyone could see. Sophie's father is calling. Maybe he'll bring his toolbox and fix her broken marriage. The room exploded with laughter. Marcus raised his glass. What does Daddy do? Sophie, plumber mechanic. Maybe he can fix Daniel's car while he's at it. Sophie said nothing. She had never told the Carters about her father. She had never mentioned his name. She had never explained why she used her mother's maiden name instead of her own. Give me my phone. Sophie's voice came out stronger than she expected. Victoria raised an eyebrow at the change in tone. Excuse me. My phone. Give it back. Or what? Victoria held the phone higher. What are you going to do about it? Sophie looked Victoria directly in the eyes. Something in her expression made the older woman's smile falter. I said, give me my phone. Victoria threw it at Sophie's chest. Take it. Call your daddy. Tell him to bring a truck so you can carry all your pathetic belongings out of my house. Sophie caught the phone and slipped it back into her pocket without looking at it. She would deal with that later. Right now, she had to survive this. Page 3. Victoria tapped the divorce papers. Sign. Sophie signed. Page 4. Sophie signed. Page 5. Sophie's eyes caught something on page 5. What is this? I agree to never contact any member of the Carter family after the dissolution of this marriage. You're trying to keep me from my own daughter. Your daughter will be a Carter, Daniel said flatly. You won't be, therefore you won't contact her. Daniel, she's my baby. She's growing inside me right now. You can't seriously expect me to... I expect you to sign the paper. Daniel's patience was wearing thin. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Harder than it has to be. Sophie's voice rose. You're taking my child. You're trying to erase me from her life before she's even born. How can it possibly get harder than this? Victoria grabbed Sophie's wrist and forced the pen toward the paper. Sign it, you hysterical fool. Sign it before I have you thrown out of here physically. Get your hands off me. Sophie pulled away. The room went silent. Victoria's eyes widened with shock. What did you say to me? I said, get your hands off me. Sophie's voice was shaking but steady. You can insult me. You can humiliate me. You can take everything I have, but you don't get to touch me. Not anymore. Daniel stepped forward. Sophie, calm down. You're embarrassing yourself. I'm embarrassing myself. Sophie laughed, and there was something unhinged in the sound. I'm standing here at your family's Christmas party, 7 months pregnant, signing divorce papers while your mistress watches, and I'm the one who's embarrassing herself. Lower your voice, Victoria hissed. Why? So your guests can pretend this isn't happening. So everyone can go back to their champagne and pretend they didn't just watch you torture a pregnant woman. Sophie looked around the room. You all saw this. You all watched and laughed and did nothing. Remember that. Olivia rolled her eyes. God, she's so dramatic. Just sign the papers already. Shut up, Olivia. Sophie's response shocked everyone, including herself. You've had your phone out recording my humiliation for the past 20 minutes. At least have the decency to stay quiet while you do it. Olivia's mouth dropped open. Victoria recovered first. That's enough. Sign the remaining pages or I'll call the police and have you arrested for trespassing. Trespassing? Sophie shook her head. I live here. This is my legal residence. Not anymore. Victoria smiled coldly. The moment you sign page 8, you have no claim to this property. And if you don't sign, I'll make sure you never work in this state again. I'll tell every school, every hospital, every organization exactly what kind of scheming little parasite you are. Sophie stared at her mother-in-law. 3 years of biting her tongue. 3 years of enduring insults with a smile. 3 years of pretending she didn't notice the whispers and the pointed looks and the cruel jokes at her expense. Something inside her shifted. You know what's funny, Victoria? Sophie's voice was calm now, dangerously calm. You've spent 3 years telling everyone I'm a gold digger. You've spent 3 years convincing your son that I married him for money. But in all that time, did you ever stop to wonder why I never asked for anything? Victoria frowned. What are you talking about? I never asked Daniel to buy me jewelry. I never asked for designer clothes. I never asked for a nicer car, or a bigger house, or any of the things a real gold digger would want. Sophie tilted her head. Didn't that ever strike you as strange? Daniel shifted uncomfortably. You were playing the long game. Mother figured it out. You were waiting until we had children, until you had leverage. I was waiting for you to love me. Sophie's voice cracked on the word. I was waiting for your family to accept me. I was waiting for the life we promised each other on our wedding day. But that was never going to happen, was it? You never loved me. None of you ever saw me as anything but an inconvenience to be tolerated. Finally, she understands. Victoria's lips curved into a cruel smile. Yes, Sophie. You were always temporary. Daniel needed someone to pass the time with while we found him a suitable wife. Megan comes from a respectable family. She has connections. She has value. You were just a placeholder. The cruelty of the admission took Sophie's breath away. Temporary. Placeholder. That's all she had ever been to them. Sign page 6, Victoria ordered. Sophie signed. Page 7, the confidentiality agreement. Sophie looked at the page. This document would silence her forever. She would never be able to tell anyone what the Carters had done to her. She would carry this humiliation alone for the rest of her life. If I sign this, Sophie said slowly, I can never talk about tonight, about any of you, about what you did to me. That's the idea. Daniel sounded bored. We have a reputation to protect. Your little sob story doesn't get to tarnish it. Sophie signed page 7. Last page. Victoria was practically giddy now. Sign it and get out. Sophie turned to page 8. The final signature. The one that would officially end her marriage and give Daniel full custody of their unborn daughter. Her baby kicked. Strong. Insistent. As if saying, don't give up. Don't let them win. But what choice did she have? No money. No lawyers. No family to support her. She had cut off her father 2 years ago when he'd warned her about Daniel. She had chosen this man over her own blood. And now she had nothing. Sophie pressed the pen to paper. Wait. The word came from her own mouth, surprising everyone, including herself. What now? Victoria's patience had reached its limit. Sophie looked up and something in her eyes had changed. The tears still fell, but beneath them was something new. Something harder. Something almost dangerous. I want to remember this moment, Sophie said quietly. I want to remember every face in this room. I want to remember who laughed. I want to remember who watched and did nothing. I want to remember every single person who celebrated my pain." She paused. "Because someday, you're going to wish you had offered me a chair." Victoria's smile faltered. "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise." Sophie signed the final page. "And I keep my promises." She slid off her wedding ring and placed it on top of the documents. 3 years of marriage reduced to a stack of papers and a piece of jewelry no one wanted. "Goodbye, Daniel." Sophie looked at the man she had loved. "I hope she makes you happy. I hope all of this was worth it. I hope when you're lying awake at 3 in the morning, you never once wonder what you threw away tonight." She turned and walked toward the door. "Good riddance," Marcus shouted after her. "Don't let the door hit you on the way out." The room erupted in fresh laughter and applause. Sophie kept walking, her head high, her spine straight. Her heart shattered into a million pieces, but her dignity somehow still intact. She was almost at the door when she heard Megan's voice loud and clear. "Daniel, we should discuss which room will be the nursery. I was thinking we could use Sophie's old bedroom. It has the best natural light." Sophie's hand froze on the doorknob. "Perfect idea," Victoria agreed. "We'll have it completely redone by the time the baby arrives. Every trace of her will be gone." Sophie turned around. The entire room was watching her, waiting for her to break down, waiting for the final moment of her humiliation. Instead, Sophie smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It wasn't a defeated smile. It was the smile of someone who had just realized something important. Something that changed everything. "Thank you," Sophie said. Victoria's face twisted with confusion. "Excuse me." "Thank you," Sophie repeated. "Thank you for showing me exactly who you are. All of you. Thank you for dropping your masks tonight. Thank you for letting me see the monsters behind the expensive clothes, and the fancy parties, and the perfect smiles." She opened the door. "And thank you for giving me permission to stop pretending." Sophie walked out into the December cold and closed the door behind her. The snow was falling heavily now, covering the Carter driveway in white. Sophie's heels sank into the fresh powder as she walked to her car. Her tears had stopped. Something else had replaced them, something hot and fierce and relentless. Her phone buzzed again. "Dad, call 24. Sophie pulled out her phone and looked at the screen. 24 missed calls. 12 text messages. Her father had been trying to reach her all night. The most recent text read, "Sophie, I know you're hurting. I know you're angry at me. But please, sweetheart, let me help. Whatever happened, we can fix it. I love you. Dad." Sophie stared at those words. 2 years ago, she had told her father she never wanted to see him again. 2 years ago, she had accused him of being controlling and paranoid when he'd warned her about Daniel. 2 years ago, she had chosen her husband over the man who had raised her alone after her mother died. Her father had never stopped calling, never stopped texting, never stopped trying to reach her despite her silence. Sophie's hands trembled as she pressed the call button. William Hartwell answered before the first ring finished. "Sophie." His voice cracked on her name, and the sound broke something inside her chest. "Sophie, where are you? Are you safe? Is the baby okay? Dad?" Sophie couldn't hold back the sob that escaped her throat. "Daddy, I'm so sorry. You were right about everything. I was stupid. I was so stupid." "Where are you?" William's voice shifted from worried to focused. "Tell me exactly where you are right now." "The Carter house. Their Christmas party." Sophie leaned against her car, her pregnant belly heavy, her heart heavier. "Daniel filed for divorce. He made me sign the papers in front of everyone. They laughed at me, Dad. They called me a gold digger. They said I was nobody. They said they're going to take my baby." Silence. Not confused silence. Not sad silence. Dangerous silence. "They made you sign standing up." William's voice was ice. "Yes. Victoria said they don't waste chairs on people like me." They're trying to take full custody of my granddaughter. Yes, Daniel said I'm not fit to be a mother. He said Megan will raise her. Megan. The name came out like a curse. The mistress. Yes. More silence. Sophie could practically hear her father thinking, calculating, planning. Sophie, listen to me very carefully. William's voice was calm, but there was something underneath it. Something that reminded Sophie of a coiled snake about to strike. I'm 14 minutes away. Do not leave that driveway. Do not go back inside. Do not speak to anyone from that family. Just wait for me. Dad, what are you going to do? Sophie. William paused. Do you trust me? She thought about all the times he had protected her growing up, all the times he had been there when she needed him, all the times she had taken his love for granted. Yes, she whispered. I trust you. Then wait for me. And Sophie. Yes. They called you a nobody. William's voice dropped even lower. They laughed at my daughter. They threatened to take my granddaughter. They made you stand while they sat and celebrated your pain. He paused. They have no idea who they just declared war on. But they're about to find out. The line went dead. Sophie stood alone in the snow, her hand pressed against her belly, her baby kicking inside her. Behind her, the Carter mansion blazed with Christmas lights. She could hear muffled laughter and music through the windows. They were already celebrating her absence. Let them celebrate. They didn't know that the woman they had just destroyed had made one phone call. They didn't know that the father they had mocked was William Hartwell, whose net worth exceeded $40 billion. They didn't know that the house they were standing in belonged to a subsidiary of Hartwell Industries. They didn't know that their jobs, their reputation, their entire existence depended on companies William controlled. They didn't know any of it, but they would. In 14 minutes, black SUVs would roll up this driveway. In 14 minutes, the Carter family would meet the man they had spent 3 years insulting without knowing his name. In 14 minutes, their perfect Christmas party would become the worst night of their lives. Sophie looked up at the falling snow and felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years. Hope. Her father was coming. Her real father. Not the imaginary plumber or mechanic the Carters had laughed about. The man who had built an empire from nothing. The man who had raised her alone after cancer took her mother. The man who had never stopped loving her, even when she had pushed him away. William Hartwell was coming. And the Carter family had no idea that the woman they had just thrown away was about to become the most powerful person in their ruined little world. Sophie placed her hand over her baby's kicks and whispered into the cold December air. Hold on, sweetheart. Grandpa's coming, and everything is about to change. She leaned against her car and waited, watching the snow erase her footprints from the Carter driveway. 14 minutes. The countdown had begun. 13 minutes felt like 13 hours. Sophie stood in the freezing December air, her breath forming small clouds that disappeared into the darkness. Her baby kicked again, stronger this time, and Sophie pressed both hands against her belly. I know, sweetheart, she whispered. I know, just a little longer. Her phone buzzed. A text from her father. 11 minutes. Don't move. Sophie stared at the message. Her father had always been precise. When he said 11 minutes, he meant exactly 11 minutes. Not 10, not 12, 11. Inside the Carter mansion, she could hear music and laughter. They were probably toasting to her departure right now. Probably making jokes about the gold digger who finally got what she deserved. Let them laugh. Her phone buzzed again. 9 minutes. I can see the house. Sophie's heart pounded. He was close. After 2 years of silence, after 2 years of her pushing him away. William Hartwell was 9 minutes from the family who had destroyed his daughter. The front door of the mansion opened. Sophie's blood froze. Daniel stepped out, a champagne glass in his hand, Megan hanging on his arm. Sophie, you're still here. He laughed. What's wrong? Car won't start. That's what happens when you drive garbage. Megan giggled. Maybe she's hoping you'll change your mind, Danny. Not a chance. Daniel took a sip of champagne. I'm just surprised she hasn't crawled away yet. That's what rats do, isn't it? Crawl back to their holes. Sophie said nothing. What's the matter? Daniel walked closer. Nothing to say. No more pathetic begging. I have to admit that was my favorite part. Watching you beg my mother for shared custody. He laughed again. As if we'd ever let someone like you near our daughter. Our daughter, Sophie repeated quietly. You keep saying that, our daughter, as if she's already yours. She is mine. The papers are signed. My lawyers will handle the rest. Daniel finished his champagne and tossed the empty glass into the snow near Sophie's feet. Now get off my property before I call the police. Your property. Sophie's voice was strange, calm, too calm. Daniel frowned. What? You said your property. Sophie looked up at the mansion. This house. You think it's yours? It's been in my family for 15 years. Of course it's mine. Interesting. Daniel didn't like her tone. What's interesting about it? Nothing. Sophie checked her phone. Nothing at all. 6 minutes. Who are you texting? Daniel stepped closer. Your father is Daddy coming to rescue his little princess. He grabbed for Sophie's phone, but she pulled it away. Don't touch me. Or what? Daniel laughed. What are you going to do, Sophie? You have nothing. No money. No lawyers. No family that matters. You're completely alone. Sophie looked at him. Really looked at him. The man she had loved for 4 years. The man she had given up everything for. The man who had just made her sign divorce papers while his family cheered. You're right, she said softly. I have nothing. Daniel smiled triumphantly. Nothing except the truth. Sophie's eyes hardened. And the truth is going to destroy you, Daniel. The truth is going to take everything you have. The truth is going to make you wish you had offered me a chair. Daniel's smile faltered. What are you talking about? Sophie didn't answer. 3 minutes. Megan tugged Daniel's arm. Danny, it's cold. Let's go back inside. In a minute. Daniel was staring at Sophie now, something uneasy crossing his face. What do you mean the truth? What truth? Sophie tilted her head. Did you ever wonder why I never told you about my family? Why I never introduced you to my father? Why we had a courthouse wedding instead of something bigger? Because you were ashamed. Daniel's voice wavered slightly. Because you came from nothing and had nothing to offer. Is that what you think? That's what I know. Sophie smiled. Not a happy smile. Not a sad smile. The smile of someone who was about to watch a house of cards collapse. Then I guess you know nothing, Daniel. Headlights appeared at the end of the driveway. 1 minute. Daniel turned to look. Who is that? More headlights. Then more. 5 vehicles in total rolling up the Carter driveway in perfect formation. Black SUVs with tinted windows and the kind of precision that spoke of professional security teams. Sophie. Daniel's voice was different now. Uncertain. Who is that? The convoy stopped. Doors opened simultaneously like a choreographed dance. Men in dark suits stepped out first, their movements controlled and professional. They took positions around the vehicles without speaking, their eyes scanning the property. Then the rear door of the center SUV opened. And William Hartwell stepped into the December cold. He was 62 years old, but he moved like a man half his age. Silver hair, steel gray eyes, a cashmere coat that cost more than the Carter family's annual income. He walked with the quiet confidence of a man who had built empires and destroyed enemies, and never once lost sleep over either. He didn't look at Daniel. He didn't look at Megan. He walked straight to Sophie and pulled her into his arms. "I'm here, sweetheart." His voice cracked with emotion. "Daddy's here. You're safe now." Sophie collapsed against her father's chest and sobbed. 2 years of silence. 2 years of stubborn pride. 2 years of pretending she didn't need him. And now he was here holding her, protecting her exactly like he had when she was a little girl afraid of thunderstorms. "I'm sorry," she cried. "Dad, I'm so sorry. You were right, about everything, about him." "Shh." William stroked her hair. "We'll talk about that later. Right now I need you to get in the car and let Marcus take you somewhere warm. Can you do that for me?" Sophie nodded against his chest. "Good girl." William kissed her forehead. "I'll be there soon. I just need to have a conversation with the Carter family first." "Dad, please don't." "Sophie." William's voice was gentle but firm. "Get in the car." A man in a suit appeared beside them. "Ms. Hartwell, I have blankets and hot tea in the vehicle. Dr. Chen is on standby if you need medical attention." Sophie looked at her father one last time. "Don't hurt them. Please. I just want my daughter." William's expression didn't change. "Get in the car, Sophie." She went. The moment Sophie was safely inside the SUV, William Hartwell turned around, and everything about him changed. The loving father disappeared. In his place stood something else entirely, something cold, something calculating, something that made powerful men nervous and competitors sleep with one eye open. He looked at Daniel Carter for the first time. "You must be the husband." Daniel swallowed hard. The confidence he had displayed moments ago was gone, replaced by something that looked a lot like fear. "Who the hell are you?" "My name is William Hartwell." The words hung in the air. Daniel's face went blank. "That's impossible." "I assure you it's very possible." William took a step closer. "My daughter has been using her mother's maiden name since college, Reynolds. She wanted to see if men would love her for who she was instead of what she could give them. Apparently she failed spectacularly in your case." "Sophie is—" Daniel couldn't finish the sentence. "Sophie Hartwell, sole heir to Hartwell Industries, worth approximately $47 billion at last count, and the mother of my grandchild, whom you apparently tried to steal while forcing her to sign divorce papers." William's voice dropped to a whisper, while she stood. The front door of the mansion flew open. Victoria Carter marched out, her face twisted with fury. "What is going on out here, Daniel? Who are these people? Why are their vehicles blocking my driveway?" William turned to face her. Victoria stopped mid-stride. "Mrs. Carter." William's smile could freeze blood. "I've heard so much about you. The woman who called my daughter a gold digger. The woman who refused to let her sit. The woman who spent 3 years making her feel worthless." He paused. "I'm William Hartwell, Sophie's father, the nobody whose toolbox you found so amusing." Victoria's face went gray. That's not possible." "You keep saying that." William glanced at Daniel. "Your son said the same thing, but I assure you, Mrs. Carter, it is very possible. And the consequences of what you did tonight are about to become very real." Harold Carter emerged from the mansion followed by Marcus Olivia and several confused guests. "What's going on? Victoria, Daniel." "Who is this man?" "This man," Victoria whispered, "claims to be Sophie's father." "Sophie doesn't have family," Harold said dismissively. "She's a nobody. A substitute teacher with no connections." "Is that what she told you?" William asked mildly. "Or is that what you assumed because she drove an old car and wore modest clothes?" Harold frowned. "What are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts." William reached into his coat and pulled out his phone. "Marcus, please bring the documents." Another man emerged from the lead SUV carrying a leather briefcase. He walked to William's side and opened it, revealing a thick stack of papers. Let me educate you about your situation, William said, his voice carrying across the driveway. This property, 847 Wisteria Lane, was purchased 18 months ago by Evergreen Properties LLC, a subsidiary of Hartwell Holdings. Your lease agreement, which you apparently never bothered to read carefully, contains a clause allowing immediate termination for hostile treatment of family members. He paused. As of this moment, you are trespassing on my property. Victoria swayed on her feet. That's a lie. We own this house. We've owned it for 15 years. You owned it for 15 years? Past tense. William handed the property documents to his attorney. When the previous owner faced bankruptcy, my company purchased the debt. We've been your landlord for the past year and a half. Sophie didn't know. I made sure she didn't know. I was hoping I would never have to use this information. His eyes hardened. I was wrong. Daniel stepped forward, his voice desperate. Mr. Hartwell, please. This is a misunderstanding. Sophie and I were having problems, yes, but I never meant to. You never meant to force a pregnant woman to sign papers on her knees. Daniel's face drained of color. She told you about that. She told me everything. William's voice was ice. Every insult, every humiliation, every cruel word your mother whispered, every time your family made her feel like less than nothing while she loved you, while she gave up her name and her fortune and her own father to be with you. He stepped closer to Daniel. And you repaid her by getting your assistant pregnant and demanding full custody of my granddaughter. The baby. Daniel's eyes widened with sudden realization. If Sophie is your daughter, then the baby is your heir, yes. William smiled without warmth. The child you wanted to raise with your mistress is the sole heir to the Hartwell fortune. $47 billion. 180,000 employees, all. Companies in 12 countries. He leaned in close enough to whisper. And you tried to steal her from my daughter, while 40 people laughed. Daniel looked like he might vomit. Victoria pushed forward, her voice shaking. Mr. Hartwell, surely we can discuss this like civilized people. If we had known who Sophie was, you would have treated her differently. William cut her off. That's exactly the problem, Mrs. Carter. You should have treated her with dignity because she's a human being, not because of who her father is. You should have offered her a chair because she's pregnant, not because she's rich. You should have welcomed her into your family because your son loved her, not because of what she could give you. I made a mistake, Victoria said, her voice cracking. We all made mistakes. But surely you can understand. I understand perfectly. William turned to his attorney. Marcus, please inform the Carter family of the additional consequences. Marcus Chen stepped forward, his voice professionally detached. Daniel Carter, you are employed as a senior architect at Morrison and Carter Architecture. That firm exists solely because of a capital investment from Hartwell Ventures 3 years ago. That investment is being withdrawn effective immediately. The firm will file for bankruptcy by Monday morning. Daniel grabbed his father's arm for support. Marcus continued without pause. Victoria Carter, your position on the board of Greenwich Children's Hospital was funded by annual donations from the Hartwell Foundation. Those donations cease immediately. Your board seat has been terminated. Harold Carter, your consulting contracts with Coastal Technologies are severed, as Hartwell Industries is ending all relationships with companies employing individuals who have demonstrated hostile behavior toward family members. Harold's face went purple with rage. You can't do this. We'll sue. You're welcome to try. William's smile was predatory. I have a legal team of 47 attorneys whose sole job is to handle situations exactly like this. How many lawyers can you afford, Mr. Carter? Harold said nothing. Marcus wasn't finished. Marcus Carter, Jr., your position at Sterling Financial is eliminated. Olivia Carter, your trust fund from your grandmother's estate managed by Hartwell Private Wealth will be frozen pending review. Additionally, the confidentiality agreement Sophie signed under duress has been voided by our legal team. She is free to tell anyone she wishes about tonight's events. Victoria let out a small sob. You're destroying us. You're destroying our entire family." "No, Mrs. Carter." William's voice was soft, but deadly. "You destroyed yourself the moment you spit on my daughter's dignity. I'm simply showing you the consequences." Megan, who had been standing frozen beside Daniel, suddenly burst out. "This isn't fair. Daniel and I are having a baby too. You can't punish an innocent child." William turned to look at her for the first time. "Miss Reynolds, sorry, I believe that's incorrect. Miss Thompson, isn't it? The assistant who was sleeping with a married man while his pregnant wife cooked your meals and cleaned your workplace." Megan's face went red. "Your child will not be affected by my actions," William continued. "Whatever support Daniel can provide on his new income is between you and him, but I suspect his minimum wage job won't quite cover the lifestyle you were anticipating." Megan turned to Daniel with horror in her eyes. "Minimum wage?" "His firm is closing," William explained pleasantly. "His reputation in architecture will be destroyed by the bankruptcy and subsequent investigations. His family connections are worthless now that his family has no connections. What exactly did you think you were getting, Miss Thompson?" Megan's face crumbled. "Daniel, tell him he's wrong. Tell him you can fix this." Daniel couldn't meet her eyes. "I see." Megan laughed bitterly. "I gave up everything for you. I'm pregnant with your child, and now I find out you're completely worthless." "Megan, please. Don't touch me." Megan stepped away from him. "God, I'm such an idiot. Victoria said you were going to be rich. She said Sophie was holding you back. She said once you got rid of her, everything would fall into place." William's attention sharpened. "Victoria told you this. Victoria encouraged you to pursue her married son." Megan nodded, tears streaming down her face. "She introduced us at a company party. She said Daniel needed someone with ambition, someone worthy of the Carter name." William looked at Victoria with something approaching disgust. "You orchestrated this. You deliberately destroyed your son's marriage so you could choose his wife yourself." Victoria's silence was answer enough. Daniel turned to his mother. "Is that true? You set this up?" "I did what was best for this family," Victoria snapped. "Sophie was going to hold you back. She had no money, no connections, no future. Megan came from a good family. She had potential." "Megan came from a family that declared bankruptcy 6 years ago," William interjected. "Her father owes $3 million to various creditors. Her potential was the same as Sophie's apparent poverty, a carefully constructed lie designed to get access to something she didn't earn." Megan let out a strangled cry and ran back toward the house. Daniel watched her go, his face blank with shock. His mother had manipulated him. His mistress had used him. His wife, his real wife, the one he had just thrown away, was worth more than everyone at this party combined. "Mr. Hartwell." Daniel's voice was hollow. "Sophie. Is she... Can I talk to her? Please, I need to explain. I need to apologize. I never knew. If I had known who she was..." "That's exactly why you can't talk to her." William's voice carried no sympathy. "You just admitted that the only reason you want to apologize is because you found out she's rich. Not because you're sorry for hurting her. Not because you realize you were wrong. Because you want access to her money." "That's not what I meant." "That's exactly what you meant." William turned away. "My attorneys will be in contact about custody arrangements. Given your financial situation and the circumstances of the divorce, I doubt you'll be able to afford much of a fight. But I encourage you to try. It will make my legal team's job more interesting." Daniel grabbed William's arm. "Please. The baby. She's my daughter too. Don't take her away from me completely. I'm begging you." William looked down at the hand on his arm until Daniel released it. "You want to be part of your daughter's life." William's voice was quiet. "Then prove you deserve it. Not to me, to Sophie. Get a job, get your life together, become the kind of man a child can look up to. And maybe someday if Sophie chooses to forgive you, that's her decision, not mine." He paused. "But understand this, Daniel. If you ever hurt my daughter again, if you ever make her cry, if you ever make her feel worthless, If you ever put your hands on her or threaten her in any way, I won't destroy your career. I won't take your house. I'll take everything you love and make sure you spend the rest of your life knowing you could have had it all." William leaned in close. "And you threw it away because you couldn't see past your own prejudice." William Hartwell walked back to his SUV without another word. The Carter family stood in their driveway surrounded by Christmas decorations that suddenly looked mocking. Their house wasn't their house. Their jobs were gone. Their reputation would be destroyed by morning. Everything they had built was collapsing around them like a house of cards in a hurricane. Victoria sank to her knees in the snow. Her designer dress ruined her perfect hair, falling around her face. "What have I done?" she whispered. "What have I done?" Harold tried to help her up, but she pushed him away. "This is your fault," she screamed at him. "You told me to investigate her. You said she was suspicious. You said no woman that pretty would marry Daniel without wanting something." "Don't blame me for this." Harold's voice was harsh. "You're the one who spit at her. You're the one who made her kneel. You're the one who's been poisoning Daniel's mind for 3 years. Daniel stood frozen, staring at the taillights of the departing convoy. His wife. His real wife. The woman he had loved. The woman he had destroyed. She was worth $47 billion, and he had made her sign divorce papers on her knees. Olivia was crying. Marcus was shouting at someone on his phone, probably his now former employer. The party guests were streaming out of the house, desperate to escape the scene of the Carter family's destruction. By morning, the story would be everywhere. By afternoon, the Carters would be a cautionary tale. By nightfall, they would be nothing. And somewhere in a warm SUV heading toward Manhattan, Sophie Hartwell pressed her hand against her belly and felt her daughter kick. Everything was about to change. The SUV pulled through the gates of the Hartwell estate at exactly 11:47 p.m. on Christmas Eve. Sophie hadn't been home in 2 years. 2 years since she had stood in the foyer and screamed at her father that he was controlling and paranoid. 2 years since she had chosen Daniel over blood. 2 years since she had walked away from everything she had ever known. And now she was back. "Sophie." Her father's voice was gentle. "We're here." She looked up through tear-blurred eyes. The house looked exactly the same stone walls, the same iron gates, the same warm lights glowing in every window, like the staff had been waiting for her to come home. "I can't go in there," Sophie whispered. "Everyone will know. Everyone will see what a fool I was. The only people inside are Dr. Chen and Mrs. Patterson." William squeezed her hand. "I sent everyone else home for Christmas. It's just us tonight." Sophie's throat tightened. Mrs. Patterson had been her nanny when she was small. After Sophie's mother died, the older woman had become something like a second mother. And Sophie had cut her off too when she married Daniel. "She probably hates me. She's been praying for you every Sunday since you left." William opened his door. "She cried when I told her you were coming home." Sophie couldn't hold back the sob that escaped her chest. William helped her out of the SUV, supporting her weight as exhaustion crashed over her like a tidal wave. The baby kicked weakly now, as if she was tired too, as if the trauma of the night had drained them both. The front door opened before they reached it. Mrs. Patterson stood in the doorway, her gray hair pulled back in a bun, her eyes red from crying. "My baby girl," she breathed. "My sweet baby girl." Sophie collapsed into the older woman's arms. "I'm sorry," Sophie sobbed. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean what I said. I didn't mean any of it. I was stupid and proud, and I threw everything away for a man who never loved me." "Hush now." Mrs. Patterson stroked Sophie's hair the same way she had when Sophie was 5 years old and crying over a skinned knee. "You're home now. That's all that matters. You're home." They moved inside slowly, Mrs. Patterson on one side and William on the other. Dr. Chen was waiting with medical equipment, his face professionally calm, but his eyes warm with concern. "Ms. Hartwell, I need to check your vitals and monitor the baby. The stress you've experienced tonight could affect both of you." Sophie nodded numbly. She let them guide her to a bedroom. Let them help her change out of her tear-stained dress. Let them take her blood pressure and listen to her baby's heartbeat and do all the things that needed to be done. "The baby is strong," Dr. Chen announced after his examination. "Heart rate is slightly elevated, but within normal range. I recommend bed rest for the next 48 hours and close monitoring, but I don't see any immediate cause for alarm." Sophie pressed her hand against her belly. "She's okay. She's a fighter." Dr. Chen smiled. "Just like her mother." The words broke something inside Sophie. She wasn't a fighter. She was a fool who had ignored every warning sign. She was a woman who had let herself be humiliated by people she had tried so hard to love. "Sophie." Her father sat down beside her bed. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." She looked at him through exhausted eyes. "Did Daniel ever hit you?" Sophie's breath caught. "No, he never touched me." "Did anyone in his family ever physically hurt you?" "No, they were cruel, but they never—" "Good." William's jaw was tight. "Because if they had, we wouldn't be having this conversation. They would be having conversations with the police." "Dad." "I mean it, Sophie." His voice cracked with emotion he rarely showed. "When I think about what they did to you tonight, when I think about my daughter 7 months pregnant signing papers while 40 people laughed." He stopped, took a breath. "I wanted to hurt them. I wanted to do more than destroy their careers and take their house. I wanted to make them feel a fraction of what they made you feel. But you didn't." "No." William shook his head. "Because you asked me not to. Because you said you just wanted your daughter. Because even after everything they did, you still found it in yourself to ask for mercy." He took her hand. "You're a better person than I am, Sophie. You always have been." Sophie started crying again. She seemed incapable of stopping. "I'm not better. I'm stupid. You warned me about Daniel. You told me exactly what he was and I didn't listen. I chose him over you. I abandoned my own father for a man who made me kneel on the floor to sign divorce papers. You didn't choose him over me." William's voice was fierce. "You chose love. You chose hope. You believed in the best of someone, and that's not stupidity. That's courage." "It doesn't feel like courage. It feels like the worst mistake of my life." "Mistakes teach us who we are." William squeezed her hand. "And now you know. You know your own strength. You know what you can survive. And you know without any doubt that you deserve better than Daniel Carter." Sophie looked at her father. This man who had built empires. This man who had raised her alone after cancer took her mother. This man who had never stopped calling, never stopped texting, never stopped loving her even when she pushed him away. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for coming. Thank you for not saying I told you so." "I would never say that." "You could. You'd be right." Being right doesn't matter when someone you love is hurting. William stood up. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we'll talk about next steps, custody arrangements, legal strategy, everything you need to protect yourself and the baby." "Dad," he paused at the door. "I love you." William Hartwell, billionaire CEO, feared negotiator, ruthless businessman, wiped a tear from his eye. "I love you too, sweetheart. I never stopped." He closed the door behind him. Sophie lay in her childhood bed, her hands on her pregnant belly, her tears finally slowing. Outside, snow continued to fall on Christmas Eve. Somewhere across Connecticut, the Carter family was dealing with the destruction of everything they had built. But Sophie wasn't thinking about them anymore. She was thinking about her daughter, about the life they would build together, about the future that had seemed impossible just hours ago, but now stretched out before her like an open road. "We're going to be okay," she whispered to her baby. "I promise. We're going to be okay." The baby kicked once strong and sure, and Sophie fell asleep. 3 days later, the news broke. Sophie woke to her phone buzzing with hundreds of notifications. News alerts, social media mentions, text messages from numbers she didn't recognize. Billionaire's daughter reveals Christmas humiliation. Hartwell heiress forced to kneel during divorce. Carter family loses everything after tormenting pregnant woman. Sophie stared at the headlines with growing horror. "Dad?" William appeared in her doorway within seconds. "I know. I'm handling it." "How did they find out I didn't tell anyone?" One of the guests at the party sold the story. William's voice was grim. "Apparently Olivia Carter's recording found its way onto the internet. Someone at the party uploaded it. It went viral overnight." "Olivia's recording?" Sophie felt sick. "The video of me signing the papers?" "Yes." Sophie's hands trembled. "Everyone saw. Everyone saw me crying. Everyone saw me on my knees." "Sophie, listen to me." William sat beside her. "Yes, people saw. But you need to understand something. The reaction isn't what you think." "What do you mean?" "People aren't laughing at you. They're furious on your behalf." William handed her his tablet. "Look at the comments. Look at the responses." Sophie scrolled through with shaking fingers. "Those monsters deserve everything they got. Who treats a pregnant woman like that? Sophie Hartwell is stronger than anyone I know. The Carter family should be ashamed to show their faces. I'm crying watching this. That poor woman." Sophie's breath caught in her throat. "You're not a villain in this story, Sophie." William's voice was gentle. "You're the hero. The woman who endured cruelty with grace. The woman who walked out with her head held high. The woman who found the strength to call for help when she needed it." "I don't feel like a hero." "Heroes rarely do." William took back the tablet. "The Carter family is finished. Their social media accounts have been flooded with angry messages. Victoria Carter had to delete all her profiles. Daniel's firm has already filed for bankruptcy. People are canceling business deals with anyone associated with them." "I didn't want this." Sophie shook her head. "I didn't want them destroyed publicly. I just wanted my daughter." "I know," William sighed. "But some things are beyond our control. The universe has a way of delivering justice even when we don't ask for it." Sophie's phone buzzed again. She looked at the screen and froze. "Daniel calling." "Don't answer," William said immediately. Sophie stared at the phone. Her thumb hovered over the accept button. "Sophie, don't. I need to hear what he has to say." "You don't owe him anything." "I know." Sophie took a breath. "But I need closure. I need to hear his voice and feel nothing. I need to know I'm really free." She answered the call. "Sophie." Daniel's voice was desperate. "Sophie, thank God. I've been trying to reach you for 3 days. Please, please let me explain." "Explain what, Daniel?" "Everything. The divorce, the papers, the way my mother treated you. I never wanted any of this. I never knew who you were. If I had known, if you had known I was rich, you would have treated me differently." "That's not what I meant." "That's exactly what you meant." Sophie's voice was cold. "You spent 3 years making me feel worthless. You let your mother humiliate me. You got your assistant pregnant. You demanded full custody of our daughter. And now you want to explain?" "Sophie, please. I'm losing everything. My job, my home, my reputation. I can't even walk down the street without people spitting at me. My mother had a nervous breakdown. My father is talking about leaving her. And this is my problem." "No." Daniel's voice cracked. "No, it's not. But I'm begging you. I'm on my knees begging you. Please ask your father to stop. Please call off the lawyers. Please give me a chance to make this right." Sophie listened to her ex-husband cry. The man who had made her sign papers while standing. The man who had called her a gold digger. The man who had watched his family torture her and done nothing. She should have felt satisfaction. She should have felt vindicated. Instead, she felt empty. "Daniel." Do you remember what you said to me at the Christmas party when I asked you to let me sit down? I don't remember exactly. You said you don't waste chairs on trash. Sophie's voice was quiet. Your mother said gold diggers don't deserve to sit at the Carter table. You made me kneel on the floor to sign divorce papers while 40 people watched. Daniel was crying harder now. My daughter was inside me. Your daughter. And you treated us like we were nothing. Sophie paused. So no, Daniel. I'm not going to ask my father to stop. I'm not going to call off the lawyers. I'm not going to give you a chance to make this right. Sophie, please. The only thing I'm going to do is protect my child from ever experiencing what I experienced that night. Sophie's voice hardened. You can petition for custody. You can hire whatever lawyers you can still afford. But I promise you, Daniel, I will fight with everything I have to make sure my daughter never feels as worthless as you made me feel. I love you, Daniel sobbed. I still love you. I was blind. I was stupid. My mother poisoned me against you, but I should have seen through it. Please, Sophie, please. You don't love me. You love what you found out I'm worth. Sophie took a breath. Goodbye, Daniel. I hope someday you become the kind of man your daughter could be proud of. But until then, stay away from me. She hung up. William was watching her carefully. Are you okay? Sophie nodded slowly. I think I am. I think I really am. What did he want? For me to save him? Sophie almost laughed. After everything he did, he wanted me to rescue him from the consequences of his own cruelty. And what did you tell him? The truth. Sophie looked at her father. That I'm not going to save him. That I'm going to protect my daughter. That he needs to become someone worth respecting before he gets anywhere near her. William smiled. That's my girl. Sophie put her hand on her belly. I need to start thinking about the future. About the custody case. About where I'm going to live. About what kind of life I want to build for my daughter. We have time. No, Sophie shook her head. I've wasted enough time already. 3 years with the wrong man. 2 years avoiding my real family. I'm done waiting. I'm done hiding. I'm done being anyone other than who I really am. She stood up slowly, her baby bump prominent. My name is Sophie Hartwell. I'm the heir to a $47 billion fortune. And I'm going to be the best mother my daughter could ever have. She looked at William. I'm going to need your help, Dad. I'm going to need lawyers and financial advisors and probably a whole team of people to help me figure out how to do this. But I'm ready. I'm finally ready to be who I was meant to be. William's eyes shone with pride. I'll make some calls. One more thing. What? Sophie took a breath. I want to start a foundation. For women like me. Women who married the wrong person. Women whose families treat them like nothing. Women who feel trapped and alone and worthless. She paused. I want to help them find their way out. The way you helped me find mine. William stared at his daughter for a long moment. Then he pulled her into a hug. Your mother would be so proud of you, he whispered. So incredibly proud. Sophie hugged him back, her tears falling freely. Outside, the December sun was finally rising. A new day, a new year, a new beginning. The Carter family had taken everything from Sophie. Her pride, her dignity, her belief in love. But they hadn't taken her spirit. They hadn't taken her strength. And they hadn't taken the one thing that mattered most. Her daughter. Sophie Hartwell was done being a victim. She was done hiding from her past. She was done apologizing for who she was. From now on, she was going to be a warrior. And the people who tried to break her were about to find out just how dangerous a warrior she could be. 2 weeks later, the custody hearing was scheduled. Sophie walked into the Connecticut family court with her father on one side and Marcus Chen on the other. 3 additional attorneys followed behind them, carrying briefcases full of evidence. Daniel was already there. He looked terrible, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes. His suit was wrinkled, probably because he couldn't afford dry cleaning anymore. He sat alone at the defendant's table with a public defender who looked barely old enough to have passed the bar exam. Victoria Carter sat in the gallery behind him, her face gaunt and hollow. The nervous breakdown Daniel had mentioned was evident in every line of her body. Harold Carter was nowhere to be seen. Sophie didn't look at any of them. She took her seat at the plaintiff's table and waited. The judge entered. An older woman with steel-gray hair and sharp eyes that suggested she had seen every kind of cruelty people could inflict on each other. "This is a custody hearing for the unborn child of Sophie Hartwell and Daniel Carter," the judge announced. "I've reviewed the preliminary documents. Ms. Hartwell is seeking full custody with no visitation rights for the father. Mr. Carter is seeking shared custody." She looked up. "Before we proceed, I want to make something clear. I don't care about money. I don't care about social status. I don't care about what's been in the news. I care about one thing and one thing only. What is best for this child?" She turned to Daniel. "Mr. Carter, I've seen the video that's been circulating online. The video of your wife signing divorce papers at your family's Christmas party. I've seen how she was treated. I've heard what was said." The judge's voice was ice. "I want you to explain to me why you believe you deserve any custody of this child after the way you treated her mother." Daniel's public defender stood up nervously. "Your Honor, my client deeply regrets his actions that night. He was manipulated by his mother, who has since suffered a mental health crisis. Mr. Carter has enrolled in anger management courses and parenting classes. He wants to be a good father. He wants to be a good father." The judge repeated the words flatly, after forcing a 7-month pregnant woman to kneel on the floor, after demanding she sign away her parental rights, after calling her worthless in front of 40 witnesses. "Your Honor, my client." "I'm not finished." The judge cut him off. "Mr. Carter, I've been a family court judge for 23 years. I've seen ugly divorces. I've seen custody battles that destroyed families. But I have never in my entire career seen anyone treat a pregnant woman the way your family treated Ms. Hartwell." Daniel's face crumbled. However, the judge turned to Sophie. "I also don't believe in punishing children for the sins of their parents. This child deserves to know her father, even if her father behaved abominably toward her mother." Sophie's heart sank. "Therefore, I'm ruling as follows. Ms. Hartwell will have full legal and physical custody of the child. Mr. Carter will have supervised visitation rights 1 hour per week at a location of Ms. Hartwell's choosing. These visits will be supervised by a court-appointed social worker for a minimum of 2 years." Daniel let out a sob of relief. "Additionally," the judge wasn't finished. "Mr. Carter will pay child support according to his current income. Given that his income is now minimum wage, this amount will be adjusted accordingly. He will also be required to complete parenting classes, anger management courses, and family therapy before any modification to this custody arrangement can be considered." "Thank you, Your Honor," Daniel whispered. "Don't thank me yet, Mr. Carter." The judge's voice was sharp. "I'm also ordering you to write a formal letter of apology to Ms. Hartwell. This letter will acknowledge exactly what you did. It will acknowledge the pain you caused. And it will be entered into the court record so that when this child is old enough, she can read it and understand who her father was on the night she was almost taken from her mother." Daniel's face went white. "Do I make myself clear?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Good." The judge banged her gavel. "Court is adjourned." Sophie sat frozen in her seat as people began moving around her. She had won. Full custody. Supervised visitation only. Her daughter was safe, but she didn't feel like celebrating. She felt the weight of everything that had happened pressing down on her chest. The cruelty, the humiliation, the betrayal. It was over now, legally over, but the scars would take much longer to heal. Daniel approached her table. Marcus immediately stepped between them. "Mr. Carter, I advise you to keep your distance." "Please." Daniel's voice was broken. Just let me say one thing. Please. Sophie looked at the man she had married, the man she had loved, the man who had destroyed her and was now destroyed himself. Say it. I'm sorry. Daniel's tears fell freely. I know those words aren't enough. I know nothing I say can undo what happened. But I'm sorry, Sophie. I'm sorry I didn't see you. I'm sorry I let my mother poison me. I'm sorry I wasn't the man you deserved. Sophie stared at him for a long moment. The judge ordered you to write an apology letter. Save it for that. She turned and walked away. Daniel didn't follow. Outside the courthouse, Sophie stopped and took a deep breath of cold January air. Her father was beside her instantly. You did well in there. Did I? Sophie shook her head. I don't know how I feel. I won. I should feel victorious, but I just feel tired and sad and empty. That's normal. William put his arm around her. Healing takes time. Justice doesn't always feel like celebration. Sometimes it just feels like relief that the worst is finally over. Sophie leaned against her father. It is over, isn't it? The legal part is over. William guided her toward the waiting car. Now comes the harder part. Rebuilding, moving forward, becoming who you're meant to be. Sophie touched her belly. Her daughter kicked. I'm ready. I know you are. William opened the car door for her. Let's go home. Sophie climbed into the car and looked back at the courthouse one last time. Somewhere inside, Daniel Carter was probably crying. Victoria Carter was probably scheming. The wreckage of the Carter family was probably becoming even more scattered. But Sophie wasn't going to think about them anymore. She was going to think about her daughter, about her father, about the future, about the woman she was becoming. The car pulled away, leaving the courthouse and the Carters and the worst chapter of Sophie's life behind. Ahead was something new, something better, something worth fighting for. 6 weeks after the custody hearing, Sophie went into labor. It happened at 3:47 a.m. on a February morning. She woke to a sharp pain cutting through her abdomen and knew immediately what was happening. Her water broke before she could even reach for her phone. "Dad!" Sophie screamed. "Dad, the baby's coming!" William burst through her bedroom door within seconds, still in his pajamas, his silver hair disheveled. "How far apart are the contractions?" "I don't know. 5 minutes. Maybe less." Sophie gripped her belly as another wave of pain crashed through her. "It's too early. I'm only 38 weeks. She's not supposed to come yet." 38 weeks is fine. The baby is fully developed." William was already on his phone. "Dr. Chen, it's William. Sophie's in labor. We're leaving for Greenwich Hospital now. Have your team ready." Mrs. Patterson appeared with a pre-packed hospital bag. "I've had this ready for 2 weeks. Come on, sweetheart. Let's get you to the car." The next 3 hours were a blur of pain and fear and desperate prayers. Sophie lay in the hospital bed, her father holding one hand and Mrs. Patterson holding the other, as contraction after contraction ripped through her body. "You're doing great," Dr. Chen encouraged. 8 centimeters dilated, almost there. "I can't do this," Sophie sobbed. "I can't, it hurts too much." "Yes, you can." William's voice was fierce. "You survived the Carter family. You survived signing those papers. You survived walking out of that house with your head held high. You can survive this." Sophie looked at her father through tears of pain. "Your mother gave birth to you in 14 hours, William continued. "She said it was the hardest thing she ever did. But when she held you for the first time, she said it was worth every second. You're going to feel that too, Sophie. Any minute now." Another contraction hit. Sophie screamed. 10 centimeters, Dr. Chen announced. "Sophie, it's time to push. On the next contraction, I need you to push as hard as you can." Sophie pushed. She pushed through pain that felt like being torn apart from the inside. She pushed through exhaustion that made her want to give up. She pushed through every fear and doubt and dark thought that had plagued her for the past 4 months. And then she heard it. A cry. A tiny, perfect, miraculous cry. "It's a girl," Dr. Chen announced, and Sophie could hear the smile in his voice. A beautiful, healthy baby girl. The nurse placed the baby on Sophie's chest. She was small and wrinkled and covered in fluid, her tiny fists waving in the air, her mouth open in an indignant wail at being forced into the cold, bright world. She was the most beautiful thing Sophie had ever seen. "Hi, baby." Sophie whispered, her tears falling onto her daughter's head. "Hi, I'm your mommy. I've been waiting so long to meet you." The baby stopped crying. Her tiny eyes, still clouded from birth, seemed to search for Sophie's face. Her small hand wrapped around Sophie's finger with surprising strength. "She knows you," Mrs. Patterson said through her own tears. "She knows her mama's voice." William stood frozen beside the bed, tears streaming down his face. The billionaire CEO. The feared negotiator. The man who had brought empires to their knees, completely undone by a 7-pound baby girl. "Dad," Sophie said softly, "come meet your granddaughter." William moved closer with shaking legs. He looked at the baby like she was made of glass, afraid to touch her, afraid she might break. "You can hold her," Sophie said. "I don't want to hurt her." "You won't. You never hurt anyone you love." William carefully lifted his granddaughter into his arms. The baby made a small sound and snuggled against his chest, her tiny hand finding the collar of his shirt and holding on. William Hartwell, who had not cried since his wife's funeral 15 years ago, broke down completely. "She looks like Elizabeth," he whispered. "She looks just like your mother." Sophie's heart cracked open. "I want to name her Grace Elizabeth Hartwell. Grace because that's what got me through everything. Elizabeth because I want her to know she came from love even if it didn't last." Grace Elizabeth Hartwell. William tested the name on his tongue. "It's perfect. Your mother would have loved it." The baby made another sound, almost like she was agreeing. Sophie laughed through her tears. "I think she likes it too." The next morning, Sophie woke to find her hospital room filled with flowers. Roses, lilies, orchids, arrangements so elaborate they barely fit through the door. Cards from business associates. Congratulations from politicians. Gifts from people Sophie had never met. But one arrangement caught her attention. A simple bouquet of daisies with a handwritten note. "Sophie. Congratulations on your daughter. I hope she brings you more happiness than I ever could. Daniel." Sophie stared at the note for a long moment. Her first instinct was to throw it away, to reject anything that came from the man who had destroyed her. But something stopped her. She thought about her daughter, about the supervised visitation that would begin in a few months, about the letter of apology the judge had ordered Daniel to write, about the fact that, like it or not, Daniel Carter was Grace's father. "What's that?" William asked, entering with coffee. "Daniel sent flowers." William's expression darkened. "Do you want me to have them removed?" Sophie considered the question. "No. Leave them." "Sophie." "She's his daughter too, Dad." Sophie touched the simple daisies. "I hate what he did to me. I'll probably hate him for the rest of my life. But Grace deserves better than a mother who teaches her to hate half of where she came from." William studied his daughter's face. "You've grown up." "I had to." Sophie looked at her sleeping baby. "She needs me to be strong. She needs me to be better than my anger." "That doesn't mean you have to forgive him." "I'm not forgiving him." Sophie's voice hardened. "I'm just not going to let my hatred poison my daughter's life. There's a difference." William nodded slowly. "Your mother would be proud of you." "I hope so." Sophie touched Grace's tiny hand. "I'm trying to be the kind of mother she was to me." 3 days later, Sophie brought Grace home to the Hartwell estate. Mrs. Patterson had transformed one of the guest rooms into a nursery. Soft yellow walls, white furniture, A mobile of silver stars hanging above the crib. Everything a baby could need and more. But Sophie didn't spend the first night in the nursery. She spent it in her own bed, with Grace sleeping in a bassinet beside her, waking every 2 hours to feed and change and comfort her daughter through the strange new world she had entered. It was exhausting. It was overwhelming. It was the hardest thing Sophie had ever done. It was also the most meaningful. Every time Grace looked at her, Sophie felt something heal inside her chest. Every tiny smile, every gurgle, every moment of connection reminded Sophie why she had fought so hard. Why she had walked out of that Christmas party instead of breaking down completely. Why she had called her father instead of giving up. This was why. 1 week after bringing Grace home, Sophie received a letter. The return address was the Bridgeport apartment where Daniel now lived. Sophie's hands trembled as she opened the envelope. Dear Sophie, the judge ordered me to write this letter, but I want you to know that I'm not writing it because I have to. I'm writing it because I need to. Because I can't sleep at night without seeing your face at that Christmas party. Because every time I close my eyes, I hear you crying while my family laughed. I was a coward. I let my mother convince me that you were beneath us. I let her poison my mind against the only woman who ever really loved me. I watched her humiliate you, and I did nothing. I demanded you kneel on the floor, and I felt powerful instead of ashamed. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know that. I'm not writing this letter to ask for it. I'm writing because our daughter deserves to know the truth someday. She deserves to know that her father was weak and cruel and wrong. She deserves to know that her mother was strong and brave and good. She deserves to know that the best thing about her came from you, not me. I'm trying to be better. I'm working at a coffee shop now. Not because I have to, but because I want to learn humility. I want to understand what it feels like to serve people instead of being served. I want to become the kind of man Grace won't be ashamed of. I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but if you ever find it in your heart to let me see her even for an hour, I promise I will spend every second of that hour trying to be worthy of her. You were right about everything, Sophie. I never saw you. I only saw what I thought you lacked. And because of that blindness, I lost the most precious thing I'll ever have. I'm sorry. Those words aren't enough. They'll never be enough. But they're all I have. Daniel. Sophie read the letter 3 times. She wanted to tear it up. She wanted to burn it. She wanted to pretend she had never received it. But she couldn't. Because somewhere in those words, buried beneath the apologies and excuses, she could feel something real. Something broken. Something that might possibly be the beginning of change. What is that? William asked, entering the nursery where Sophie sat feeding Grace. Daniel's apology letter. William's jaw tightened. The court ordered one. Yes. Sophie folded the letter carefully. He says he's working at a coffee shop. Learning humility. Do you believe him? Sophie thought about the question. Really thought about it. I don't know, she finally admitted. Part of me thinks it's another manipulation. Another attempt to get access to our money. But part of me... She looked at Grace. Part of me wants to believe people can change. Because if they can't, what hope is there for any of us? William sat down beside her. What are you going to do? Nothing right now. The supervised visitation doesn't start for another 2 months. I'll see how he behaves. I'll watch for warning signs. And if he's really changed. Sophie took a breath. If he's really changed, then maybe someday Grace can have some kind of relationship with her father. And if he hasn't changed? Sophie's eyes hardened. Then I'll protect her from him with everything I have. William nodded. That's my girl. 2 months passed like a dream. Sophie fell into the rhythm of motherhood. Feeding, changing, soothing, playing. Watching Grace grow from a tiny newborn into a curious baby who tracked movements with her eyes and smiled when she heard Sophie's voice. The foundation Sophie had envisioned began to take shape. She hired a team of lawyers specializing in family law. She established partnerships with women's shelters across Connecticut. She set up a hotline for women facing abuse or manipulation in their marriages. The Sophie Hartwell Foundation for Women's Dignity officially launched on a sunny April morning, and 3 days later, Daniel Carter arrived for his first supervised visitation. Sophie watched through a two-way mirror as Daniel entered the visitation room. He looked different, thinner, older. His expensive suits had been replaced by simple clothes that looked like they came from a thrift store. He sat down at the table and waited, his hands clasped in front of him, his leg bouncing with nervous energy. The social worker entered with Grace in her arms. Daniel's face transformed. All the nervous energy disappeared, replaced by something raw and vulnerable. His eyes filled with tears as the social worker placed Grace in his arms for the first time. "Hi, Grace," Daniel whispered, his voice cracking. "Hi, baby girl. I'm your daddy." Grace looked up at him with curious eyes. She didn't cry. She didn't fuss. She just studied this new face with the intensity that babies sometimes have, as if they can see things adults have forgotten how to see. "You're so beautiful," Daniel continued, tears streaming down his face. "You look just like your mama. You have her eyes, her perfect little nose." He touched Grace's tiny hand. "I'm so sorry, Grace. I'm so sorry I wasn't there when you were born. I'm so sorry I hurt your mama. I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to make it up to both of you." Sophie watched from behind the glass, her emotions tangled in knots. She wanted to hate him. She did hate him. But watching him hold their daughter, watching him cry with genuine emotion, watching him whisper promises to a baby who couldn't understand them, she felt something else too. Not forgiveness, not love, not anything close to those things. But maybe possibly the smallest seed of hope that Grace wouldn't have to grow up without a father entirely. "How are you feeling?" William asked, standing beside her. "Confused." Sophie admitted. "I want to believe he's changed, but I don't trust it." "That's wise." William watched Daniel through the glass. "Trust is earned over years, not weeks." "What if he hurts her?" Sophie's voice cracked. "What if I give him access to her life and he destroys her the way he destroyed me?" "Then you'll remove him, permanently." William's voice was iron. "But Sophie, you also have to consider the alternative. What if you keep him away completely and Grace grows up wondering why her father never tried to see her? What if she blames you for keeping them apart?" Sophie closed her eyes. "I can't win." "You're not trying to win. You're trying to do what's best for your daughter." William put his hand on Sophie's shoulder. "And sometimes that means making impossible choices with no good options." The visitation ended after 1 hour. Daniel handed Grace back to the social worker with visible reluctance. His eyes were red from crying. His hands trembled as he let go of his daughter. "Thank you," he said to the social worker. "Please tell Sophie thank you. This was—" He couldn't finish the sentence. The social worker nodded and brought Grace back to Sophie. Sophie took her daughter and held her close, breathing in her baby scent, feeling her small heart beating against her chest. "How was she?" Sophie asked. "Calm the entire time," the social worker reported. He held her appropriately, spoke to her gently, followed all the guidelines. She paused. "I've supervised a lot of visits, Ms. Hartwell. Most absent fathers treat it like an obligation. He treated it like a gift." Sophie didn't know what to say. 1 week later, Victoria Carter appeared at the Hartwell estate gates. Sophie was in the garden with Grace when the security call came through. Her blood ran cold at the name. "Send her away," Sophie said immediately. "She says she has something to tell you," the security guard replied. "Something important. She says she'll wait at the gate as long as it takes." Sophie looked at Grace, sleeping peacefully in her stroller. "What do you want to do?" William asked, appearing beside her. "I want to never see her face again." Sophie's hands were shaking. "I want to forget she exists." "Then we'll send her away." Sophie hesitated. Something in her gut was churning. Something that felt like unfinished business, like a wound that hadn't fully closed. "No, Sophie heard herself say. Let her in. But she doesn't come near Grace, and you stay with me the entire time. Victoria Carter looked like a ghost of herself. The perfectly coiffed hair was limp and gray. The designer clothes had been replaced by a simple dress that hung loose on her thin frame. The cruel confidence that had defined her was gone, replaced by something broken and desperate. She stood in the Hartwell foyer like a beggar in a palace, her eyes darting nervously between Sophie and William. Thank you for seeing me, Victoria said, her voice barely audible. Say what you came to say and leave. Sophie's voice was ice. Victoria's hands twisted together. I came to apologize. Did the court order you to? No. Victoria shook her head. Daniel's letter was court-ordered. Mine is... She swallowed. Mine is because I can't live with myself anymore. Sophie said nothing. I destroyed my family. Victoria's voice cracked. I destroyed my son's marriage. I destroyed my husband's career. I drove Marcus and Olivia away with my obsession with status and money. And I did it all because I was terrified of being ordinary. Tears began streaming down Victoria's face. I grew up poor, Sophie. Really poor. The kind of poor where you don't know if there's going to be food for dinner. The kind of poor where people look at you like you're garbage. She wiped her eyes. I spent my entire life running from that girl. Building walls. Accumulating things. Making sure no one could ever look down on me again. And you looked down on me instead. Yes. Victoria nodded miserably. I saw myself in you. A young woman without money marrying into a family she didn't belong to. And instead of welcoming you, instead of remembering what it felt like to be in your position, I punished you for reminding me of who I used to be. Sophie's throat tightened. She hadn't expected this. Hadn't expected vulnerability from the woman who had made her kneel on the floor. I don't expect forgiveness, Victoria continued. I know what I did is unforgivable. I just needed you to know that I understand now. I understand what I destroyed, and I will carry that shame for the rest of my life. Sophie stared at the broken woman in front of her. You called me a gold digger, Sophie said quietly. You said I was worthless. You made me sign divorce papers while 40 people watched and laughed. You tried to take my daughter. I know. You spit on my dignity. I know. And now you want absolution. No. Victoria shook her head. I want you to know that I know. That's all. I want you to know that somewhere in this ruined shell of a person, there's finally understanding of what I did. Whether you forgive me or not, I needed you to see that. Sophie was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke. Get out of my house, Victoria. Victoria flinched like she'd been slapped. Not because I hate you, Sophie continued. I do hate you. But that's not why I'm telling you to leave. I'm telling you to leave because your apology doesn't change anything. Your tears don't undo the damage. Your guilt doesn't heal the wounds. Sophie took a step closer. You want to show me you've changed? Don't come to my house begging for forgiveness. Go out and help someone else. Find a young woman being mistreated by her in-laws and stand up for her. Find a mother being pushed around and defend her. Be the person you should have been for me. Victoria stared at Sophie with wide eyes. That's how you earn redemption, Victoria. Not with words. With actions. Now get out. Victoria turned and walked toward the door. But just before she reached it, she stopped. Your daughter is lucky, Victoria said without turning around. She has a mother who will teach her to be strong. I wish... Her voice broke. I wish I had been that kind of mother to Daniel. She left. Sophie stood in the empty foyer, her heart pounding, her hands shaking. William appeared beside her. Are you okay? No. Sophie shook her head. But I will be. She walked back to the garden where Grace was still sleeping in her stroller. Sophie sat down beside her daughter and watched her breathe. I'm going to teach you to be kind, Sophie whispered. But I'm also going to teach you to be strong. I'm going to teach you that your worth doesn't come from money or status or what other people think of you. It comes from here. She touched her heart. It comes from who you choose to be when no one is watching. Grace stirred in her sleep, her tiny lips curving into something that looked almost like a smile. Sophie smiled back. The wounds were still there. The scars would probably never fully heal. But sitting in the garden with her daughter, surrounded by spring flowers and warm sunshine, Sophie felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Peace. Not the peace of forgetting. Not the peace of pretending nothing had happened. The peace of knowing she had survived. The peace of knowing she was building something beautiful from the ashes of something terrible. The peace of a woman who had finally found her way home. 1 year later, Sophie stood at the podium of the Waldorf Astoria ballroom. 500 people filled the room. Politicians, business leaders, celebrities, journalists. All of them gathered to celebrate the first anniversary of the Sophie Hartwell Foundation for Women's Dignity. Sophie's hands weren't shaking anymore. 1 year ago tonight, she began, her voice clear and strong. I was at a different party, a Christmas party in Connecticut. I was 7 months pregnant, and I was forced to kneel on the floor and sign divorce papers while 40 people laughed at me. The room went silent. I was called worthless that night. I was called a gold digger. I was told that I didn't deserve to sit in a chair because people like me didn't deserve basic human dignity. Sophie paused. Those words almost destroyed me. Almost. She looked out at the audience. But here's what they didn't know. Here's what cruelty never understands. When you try to break someone who refuses to stay broken, you create something far more powerful than you could ever imagine. You create a survivor, a fighter, a woman who rises from the ashes and builds something beautiful from the ruins of what tried to destroy her. Applause erupted through the ballroom. Sophie waited for it to quiet. In the past 12 months, the Sophie Hartwell Foundation has helped 3,000 women escape abusive marriages. We've provided legal representation for mothers fighting for custody of their children. We've built 18 shelters across the country for women who have nowhere else to go. And we've proven over and over again that dignity cannot be taken from you. It can only be given away. She looked at the front row where her father sat holding Grace on his lap. Her daughter was 14 months old now, with bright eyes and a curious smile that made everyone who met her fall instantly in love. I didn't do this alone, Sophie continued. I had a father who never stopped loving me even when I pushed him away. I had a daughter who gave me a reason to keep fighting. And I had 3,000 women who trusted me with their stories, their pain, their hope. Her voice cracked slightly. This foundation isn't about me. It's about them. It's about every woman who has ever been told she's worthless. Every mother who has ever been threatened with losing her children. Every human being who has ever been forced to choose between dignity and survival. Sophie straightened her spine. To those women, I want to say this. You are not alone. You are not worthless. You are not what they called you. You are survivors. You are warriors. And there is an army of people ready to stand beside you and fight. The ballroom erupted in a standing ovation. Sophie stepped back from the podium, her heart pounding with something that felt like triumph. Not the cruel triumph of revenge, the quiet triumph of transformation. Her father met her at the edge of the stage, Grace reaching for her mother with eager arms. Mama! Grace squealed her favorite word. Sophie took her daughter and held her close. Hi, baby girl. Did you watch Mama's speech? She clapped the whole time. William said, his eyes shining with pride. Loudest person in the room. Sophie laughed and kissed Grace's forehead. That's my girl. The reception that followed was a blur of handshakes and congratulations and promises of donations. Sophie moved through the crowd with Grace on her hip, accepting praise she still wasn't entirely comfortable receiving. She was talking to a senator about federal funding for domestic violence shelters when she felt someone watching her. Sophie turned. Daniel stood at the edge of the ballroom near the entrance looking like he wasn't sure if he belonged there. He wore a simple suit, not expensive, but clean and pressed. His hands were clasped nervously in front of him. Sophie's heart lurched. She excused herself from the senator and walked toward her ex-husband Grace, still in her arms. "What are you doing here?" Sophie asked when she reached him. "I bought a ticket." Daniel's voice was quiet. "I wanted to hear your speech. I wanted to see what you've built." He looked at Grace and his eyes softened. "Hi, baby girl." "Dada," Grace said, reaching for him. Sophie hesitated. Then she handed Grace to her father. Daniel took his daughter with the careful reverence he'd shown since the first supervised visit. "Hey, sweetheart, you're getting so big. Look at you." Grace grabbed his nose and giggled. "The supervised visitation ended 3 months ago," Sophie said. "You don't have to buy tickets to events to see her." "I know." Daniel looked at Sophie. "I didn't come just for her. I came for you." Sophie's guard went up. "What do you mean?" "I wanted to see you in your element. I wanted to see the woman I was too blind to see when we were married." Daniel's voice cracked. "Sophie, that speech you gave, those numbers, 3,000 women, 18 shelters. You built all of that in 1 year. I had help. You had drive." Daniel shook his head. "I spent 3 years trying to make you small, trying to keep you in a box that made me feel big. And all that time you had this inside you, this power, this purpose, and I was too stupid to see it." Sophie didn't know what to say. "I'm not here to ask for anything," Daniel continued quickly. "I know I don't deserve anything. I just wanted you to know that I see you now, finally, for the first time. And what I see is extraordinary." Grace yawned and laid her head on Daniel's shoulder. Sophie watched her daughter snuggle against her father, perfectly content, perfectly safe. The man who had once made Sophie kneel on the floor was now holding their child with more tenderness than Sophie had ever seen from him. "How's the coffee shop?" Sophie asked. Daniel smiled slightly. "I got promoted. Assistant manager. It's not architecture, but it's honest work. And the people there don't care who my family was or how much money I used to have. They just care if I show up on time and treat them with respect." "And do you, every day?" Daniel met her eyes. "I'm not the man I was, Sophie. I know saying that isn't enough. I know I have to prove it over years, not words. But I want you to know that I'm trying. Really trying." Sophie studied his face. Looking for deception. Looking for manipulation. Looking for any sign of the cruel man who had destroyed her at that Christmas party. She couldn't find it. "Grace has her first birthday party next month," Sophie heard herself say. "At the estate. If you want to come." Daniel's eyes widened. "Really? Don't make me regret it." "I won't." Daniel's voice was thick with emotion. "I promise, Sophie. I won't." He handed Grace back to her mother and stepped away. "Daniel." He turned. "I'm never going to love you again." Sophie's voice was clear. "I want you to understand that. What we had is gone. It's never coming back." "I know. But Grace loves you. And for her sake, I'm willing to let you be part of her life." Sophie paused. "Don't waste this chance. It's the only one you'll get." Daniel nodded. "Thank you, Sophie. Thank you for being a better person than I ever was." He walked away. William appeared at Sophie's side. What did he want? To see his daughter. Sophie watched Daniel disappear into the crowd. To show me he's changed. And has he? Sophie thought about the question. Really thought about it. "I don't know yet," she admitted, "but I'm willing to find out, for Grace's sake." William nodded slowly. "Your mother was like that. She always believed people could change, even when I told her she was naive." Was she naive? No. William smiled. She was right more often than she was wrong. And when she was wrong, at least she'd given people the chance to be better. He looked at Sophie. You're so much like her. Sophie's eyes filled with tears. I wish she could have met Grace. She knows. William put his arm around his daughter. Wherever she is, she knows, and she's proud of you. 3 weeks later, Grace's first birthday party filled the Hartwell estate with laughter. Sophie had invited everyone who mattered. Mrs. Patterson, who had helped raise Sophie and was now helping raise Grace. Dr. Chen, who had delivered Grace on that February morning. The staff of the foundation, who had become like family over the past year. And Daniel, who arrived exactly on time with a carefully wrapped present and nervous energy radiating from every pore. Is this okay? Daniel asked Sophie quietly, holding up the gift. I didn't know what to get her. I asked at the toy store what 1-year-olds like. Sophie looked at the package. It was wrapped in pink paper with uneven edges, clearly done by hand. You wrapped it yourself. I watched a YouTube video. Daniel smiled sheepishly. It took 4 tries. Sophie almost laughed. Almost. It's fine. Put it with the others. The party was chaos in the best possible way. Grace smashed her face into her birthday cake and came up grinning with frosting in her hair. She tore wrapping paper with gleeful abandon. She squealed when William pretended to steal her nose, and she reached for Daniel when he sat down beside her. Dada up, Grace demanded. Daniel lifted her onto his lap, his face glowing with a joy that looked nothing like the cruel man Sophie had married. Sophie watched them from across the room. Penny for your thoughts, Mrs. Patterson asked, appearing beside her. I'm trying to figure out how I feel. How do you feel? Sophie considered the question. Like the world doesn't make sense anymore. Like the person I hated most has become someone I almost don't recognize, like maybe people really can change. They can. Mrs. Patterson nodded. I've seen it happen. Not often, mind you. Most people stay exactly who they are. But some people, the ones who really want to be different, they find a way. Do you think Daniel wants to be different? I think he wants to be the kind of father Grace deserves. Mrs. Patterson watched Daniel blow raspberries on Grace's belly, making her shriek with laughter. Whether he can become that person, only time will tell. Sophie nodded slowly. Time. That was the answer. Not forgiveness. Not trust. Not the sudden erasure of everything that had happened. Just time. And watching. And being willing to believe in change while being ready to protect her daughter if that belief was proven wrong. Mrs. Patterson. Yes, dear. Thank you. For being here. For never giving up on me. Sophie's voice cracked. For being the mother I needed when I didn't have one. Mrs. Patterson's eyes filled with tears. Oh, sweetheart, you never needed me to be your mother. You just needed someone to remind you how strong you already were. They hugged while Grace continued squealing in the background. Later that evening, after the guests had gone and Grace had been put to bed, Sophie found her father in his study. Can we talk? William looked up from his papers. Of course. What's on your mind? Sophie sat down across from him. I've been thinking about the future, about what I want Grace's life to look like. And what do you want it to look like? I want her to grow up knowing she's loved. By me, by you, and yes, by Daniel too, if he continues to earn that place in her life. Sophie paused. But I also want her to grow up knowing who she is, where she came from, the good and the bad. William nodded. Meaning someday I'm going to tell her about that Christmas party, about the divorce papers, about what her father and his family did to me. Sophie's voice hardened. I'm not going to hide it from her. I'm not going to pretend everything was always perfect. That could affect her relationship with Daniel. It should. Sophie met her father's eyes. Grace deserves the truth. She deserves to know that her mother was hurt, but chose to rise above it. She deserves to know that her father was cruel, but chose to change. She deserves to see that people are complicated, that they can be both good and bad, that the measure of a person isn't who they were at their worst, but who they choose to become after. William was quiet for a long moment. "Your mother and I had a fight once," he finally said. "A bad one. Early in our marriage. I said things I shouldn't have. I made her cry. I was cruel in ways I'm still ashamed of." Sophie's eyes widened. Her parents had always seemed perfect together. "She forgave me," William continued, "but she never forgot. And years later, when you were about 10, she told you about it." "I don't remember that." "You asked why marriage was so hard, why people who loved each other sometimes hurt each other." William's voice softened. "Your mother told you about our fight. She told you how she'd felt, how I'd apologized, how we'd rebuilt trust slowly, brick by brick. And then she said something I've never forgotten." "What?" "She said love isn't about being perfect. It's about being willing to do the work when you're not." William looked at Sophie. "You're doing that work, Sophie, with Daniel, with yourself, with Grace. You're showing your daughter what it looks like to survive pain and transform it into something beautiful." Sophie's tears fell freely now. "I miss her, Dad. I miss her so much." "I know." William stood and crossed to Sophie kneeling beside her chair. "I miss her too, every single day. But I see her in you, Sophie, in your strength, in your compassion, in the way you love Grace with your whole heart." He took her hand. "Elizabeth would be so proud of you, so incredibly proud." Sophie hugged her father and let herself cry. 6 months later, the Sophie Hartwell Foundation celebrated a milestone. 10,000 women helped. 50 shelters built. $100 million raised. The foundation had become one of the largest organizations of its kind in the country. Sophie stood in the headquarters, surrounded by photographs of women whose lives had been transformed. Women who had escaped abuse. Women who had won custody of their children. Women who had rebuilt their lives from the ashes of what had tried to destroy them. "Ms. Hartwell." Her assistant appeared in the doorway. "There's someone here to see you." "Who?" "She says her name is Rebecca. She says you helped her 2 years ago." Sophie's heart skipped. She remembered Rebecca. The thin woman with shadows under her eyes who had approached her at the foundation's launch party. The woman who had been trapped in a marriage just like Sophie's. "Send her in." Rebecca walked through the door, but she looked nothing like the broken woman Sophie remembered. Her eyes were bright. Her shoulders were back. She moved with confidence that hadn't existed before. "Rebecca." Sophie crossed the room and took her hands. "Look at you. Look at me." Rebecca laughed, tears streaming down her face. "Sophie, I got custody of my children. I got my divorce finalized. I got a job. A real job. And last month I bought a house. My own house. With my own money." Sophie pulled her into a hug. "I couldn't have done it without you," Rebecca said against Sophie's shoulder. "Without the foundation. Without the lawyers you provided. Without the shelter that kept me safe while I got back on my feet." She pulled back and looked at Sophie with fierce gratitude. "You saved my life." "No." Sophie shook her head. "You saved your own life. I just showed you the door. You're the one who walked through it." "That's what you always say." Rebecca wiped her eyes. "But Sophie, I want you to know something. My daughter asked me the other day who my hero was. Do you know what I told her?" Sophie waited. "I told her about you. About a woman who was humiliated at a Christmas party, but didn't let it break her. About a woman who turned her pain into purpose. About a woman who builds doors for people who feel trapped." Rebecca's voice cracked. "I told her that heroes aren't the ones with superpowers. Heroes are the ones who survive the worst and still find the strength to help others. That's you, Sophie. You're my hero." Sophie couldn't speak through her tears. Rebecca hugged her one more time, thanked her one more time, and left. Sophie stood alone in her office, surrounded by photographs of women she had helped, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what she had built. Mom would be proud. Sophie turned. Her father stood in the doorway, Grace in his arms. "Mama," Grace shouted, reaching for her. Sophie took her daughter and held her close, breathing in her scent, feeling her small heart beating against her chest. "She would be proud," Sophie agreed. "But not because of the foundation, not because of the money or the fame or the recognition." "Then why?" Sophie looked at her father. At the man who had saved her when she couldn't save herself. At the grandfather who loved Grace with every fiber of his being. At the family she had almost lost and would never take for granted again. "Because I didn't let them win," Sophie said. "Because I survived. Because I chose to be better instead of bitter. Because I'm raising a daughter who will never have to wonder if she's worthy of love." She kissed Grace's forehead. "That's what Mom would be proud of. Not what I built, but who I became." William's eyes glistened. "Who you've always been, Sophie? You just finally let yourself see it." Sophie smiled at her father. Then she looked at her daughter. At Grace Elizabeth Hartwell, the little girl who had given her a reason to fight. The little girl who would grow up knowing she was loved unconditionally. The little girl who would someday hear the story of that Christmas party and understand that her mother had faced the worst and emerged stronger. "Let's go home," Sophie said. She walked out of the foundation headquarters with her father and her daughter, leaving behind the photographs and the awards and the evidence of everything she had accomplished. None of that mattered as much as what she was walking toward. Home, family, love. The life she had almost lost and had fought with everything she had to reclaim. Sophie Hartwell had been forced to kneel on the floor and sign away her marriage while 40 people laughed. She had been called worthless and gold digger and nobody. She had been told she didn't deserve to sit in a chair. But she had risen. She had built an empire of compassion from the ashes of cruelty. She had raised a daughter who would never question her own worth. She had proven that dignity cannot be taken, only given away. And she had shown the world what happens when you try to destroy a woman who refuses to stay broken. 2 years after the worst night of her life, Sophie Hartwell walked into the December sunset with her daughter in her arms and her father by her side. Behind her, the foundation she had built continued helping women escape darkness. Before her, a future stretched out bright and full of possibility. And in her heart, a truth burned with unshakable certainty. She had survived. She had transformed. She had won. Not because she had destroyed the people who had tried to destroy her, but because she had become someone they could never touch again. Someone stronger than their cruelty. Someone greater than their contempt. Someone who had learned the most important lesson of all. The people who try to break you only succeed if you let them. And Sophie Hartwell had never let anyone break her. She had let them forge her. Into a mother, a warrior, a legend. Into a woman who would never again sign anything on her knees. Into a woman who had earned every chair she would ever sit in. Into Sophie Hartwell. Unbroken. Unstoppable. Unashamed. And that was the only ending this story was ever going to have.